Let's welcome in my good friends, Ross Benjamin and Ralph Michaels, to the show. Ross and Ralph, obviously, the big game. Kansas State and Iowa State. Number 22 against number 17, a.k.a. Farmageddon. A little different this time around, though, as the game takes place over in Dublin, Ireland. Noon Eastern kickoff on ESPN. Looking at the odds, Kansas State currently a 3-point favorite, total up to 50.5, circa already at 51. Ralph, I'm going to start by going to you with our very first question. I want to talk about trends. You are a resident trend expert. By this time the game kicks off on Saturday, everyone is likely to be aware that Matt Campbell and Iowa State are 4-1 straight up and 5-0 ATS the last 5 years versus Chris Kleiman and Kansas State. My question to you, with all the roster turnover we're experiencing in the current climate of college football, does a trend like that matter less than it did, say, 5 to 10 years ago?
The trends, people, I use a lot of trends, Brian. I'll talk a lot of trends, and I'll talk about this and trends in this game. But I just have to start this season off by saying this. Trends are probably 15 to 20% of me breaking down and handicapping a game. And when you look at one team trend versus the others, I really don't pay attention to them, with the exception of this. I'm going to go back to the Snyder days at Kansas State. When you have an in-state rival and you want to continually kick their butt and make them your little sister, those are the type of rivalries that I don't mind. If you have a dominant team and they continue to cover. But when some teams are better and some teams are worse and they're playing each other every year, I really don't take those coaching trends into consideration.
All right. So it's not as big of a deal. Obviously, you look at what happened last year in this game as well. Kansas State could have won if it wasn't for some miscues. You go back to that game, they lose 29-22, and the Kansas State was done in by a couple turnovers. They had a field goal blocked, a safety, failed on 2 4th and shorts. Ross, let me bring you in next here. We're going fast here. And this game being in Dublin, Ireland, obviously a huge part of the handicap. And conventional wisdom is, okay, these teams are traveling. It's an unfamiliar setting. So they're going to start slow. But I looked up, okay, the last 3 season openers over in Ireland. This will be the 4th year in a row college football opens across the Atlantic. The first half scoring has seen at least 28 points in those 3 games. So is there anything you're looking at? I mean, I know that's probably going to be a popular question here about the first half. There's been a lot of talk. Being that this is a conference matchup, do you think that maybe they're going to start slower, or is there something to those fast starts we've seen in previous years?
Yeah, I don't put a lot of stock in that. One of those games was Notre Dame and Navy, and Notre Dame put up all the points that you're talking about, over 28 in the first half. So I will tell you this, one trend, Ralph, I think will hold up is the over and under of 70% on whether it's over or under 70% of the crowd being intoxicated. So I would say it's over 70% is a best bet, Ralph. I know you like those type of things. So
are you saying Kelly Stewart is going to be at the game drinking? Is that what you're telling us?
Yeah, well, she's a trendsetter right there. You know what I mean? But in terms of that, Brian, it's a great question. And no, I don't look at that. I think every individual matchup on a neutral field is its own separate entity. And just because the game's being played in Ireland, your logic of you think they would start slow, with the time difference, which could be anywhere from 6 to 9 hours, depending on the teams that are playing in the game. I think I would put more emphasis on the fact that you mentioned that loss by Kansas State in the regular season finale against Iowa State, and revenge factor in these types of situations. First game out of the box on a neutral field, the continuity of the coaching staffs. But I like Kansas State here. I just think that with the experience, with the revenge factor, and the fact they're a small favorite in this game, if I can get 150 or less on the money line, which is highly improbable at this point, that's the route I would go. But I wouldn't hesitate to lay the 3 points here with an experienced Kansas State team that brings back 14 starters, also bringing in 14 transfers out of the portal. I love Chris Kleeman. He's done a terrific job in his first 6 years at Kansas State, 48-28 straight up, 9-4 last year. And Matt Campbell, by the way, 3-6 in Big 12 openers since he arrived on campus in Ames, Iowa. So I am going to go with, I like Kansas State here. I have a lean toward Kansas State in this opening game in Dublin, Ireland.
Ralph, I'll get your take on that in just a second. I just want to follow up with a couple other things here. On the Iowa State side, quarterback Rocco Becht is back, but without his top 2 receivers from last season, guys. Both of them trying to make an NFL roster, ironically, both with the Texans. And it's worth mentioning, this just isn't any 2 receivers that they lost. The Cyclones were the only team in the country besides Ohio State that had 2 1,000-yard receivers last year. So it's going to be really interesting to see if a revamped receiver room, guys, could take advantage of what is a retooled K-State secondary. That is my one area of concern with Kansas State. I see in the comment section, people are talking about Avery Johnson, maybe rushing yards over. He is the key to that offensive success, guys, with his feet. Threw a school record, or was accounted for a school record 25 touchdowns last year. 10 interceptions, though. We have to cut that down. They have to cut that down. He's fully healthy, though, being that it's the first game of the season, is quarterback Avery Johnson. So, Ralph, this game here, Kansas State, Iowa State, obviously it's the one everyone's going to be most interested in. Side total, is there what attracts, what's piqued your interest here the most?
Well, you look at 2 experienced quarterbacks returning, as you mentioned, but the unit that jumps out to me the most, guys, is the O-line for Iowa State. Iowa State returns all 5 starters, and all 5 starters started at least 6 games. And in their career, 56, 60, they have almost 90 career games started. So that to me is a big advantage early in the year. You look at the Kansas State D-line, they do return all 3 of the 4 D-lines. They have a great linebacker in Romaine. He's probably the best defensive player on the field. Maybe Jontez Williams, the cornerback from Iowa State. Those are by far the 2 best defensive players. But again, it is the O-line which has me leaning with Iowa State. It's not going to be a play of mine. But I do want to mention, too, I like the under. Now, I am going against a little bit what you said, Brian, about those international games getting off to a quick start. But let's remember this. Iowa State is an under team under their head coach. You look at when Iowa State's been a dog or a small favorite. They've been a dog or a small favorite 90 times, and they are 35.6% to the over. That is 64% to the under. So anytime I have Iowa State, I sort of lean to the under first. It doesn't mean I'm going to bet that. But just like I also talked about playing a conference game in game 1, you're familiar with these teams. You know their patterns. Even if they have a new coach, you are still familiar with some of the players. So I went back to 2021. In game 1, if there's a conference game, the underdog is 14-6-1 against the spread. That is 70%. And the over-under is 5-16. That is 76% to the under. So I'm not going to base a play on those things, but I like the logic of having a conference dog that is used to being a dog and plays well in that role with the best offensive line here against 2 teams that are very familiar with each other.
All right. That's Kansas State, Iowa State there. And yes, our own Kelly Stewart will be in the stadium. Please, on X, follow at Kelly in Vegas. I'm sure she will be tweeting pictures throughout the contest. I was in Dublin a few years ago, guys, and yes, it is indeed a very, very good, easy place to have a good time, I would say. All right, what do you say? Let's talk about a different game here. Obviously, there's more than just Kansas State, Iowa State. There's a break in the action in the afternoon. There's UNLV's taking on Idaho State at 4:30, but let's skip to the FCS matchups in the evening and stay in the Big 12. Kansas, they're going to take on Fresno State. Ralph, I know because I followed you on WagerTalk today earlier this week that you have a free play on that game looking at the total, but let me throw it to Ross first here. Is there anything on the side you're looking at? Everyone I'm talking to all week says, BP, we've got Kansas power rated north of 2 touchdowns on this game, but I don't know. So talk about the game in general. And a follow-up question I've got for you, you can address this right away, is How much do power ratings matter in week 0, week 1? My guess is a little bit less relative to the rest of the season.
Well, I'm glad you asked.
Thank you.
Power ratings. Power ratings don't mean a hell of a lot to me early on because they're projections, That's my opinion. Now, if you have your own power ratings and you've been successful in creating those, that's another story. But generally speaking, power ratings early in the year can sometimes be deceiving. And there's not a lot to go on. So again, it's all projection based. I mean, in terms of a side here, again, I don't like betting chalks all the time, but again, I'm going to turn to the chalk here in Kansas. They're the more experienced team. And you look at Fresno, they've gone to 4 straight bowl games, but they're going through a coaching change and no longer there, Jeff Tedford, because of health reasons. Coach Entz takes over at Fresno State, and a big transformation, 10 new assistant coaches, 21 new players brought in the transfer portal, all mid-year players, meaning not freshmen, but players that have played elsewhere and opted to go to Fresno State. So the continuity, they may have an experience factor, but the continuity of a new coaching staff and new players is very concerning to me in a season opener against a team with more continuity, with a established coaching staff that's been there for a while. And, I really like Lance Leipold, Brian. I think he's a very underrated head coach. He turned the program around at the University of Buffalo. They went 5-7 last year, but look, they started 1-5 and they lost some heartbreakers. They finished the year 4-2 in their last 6, and they pulled off 3 outright upsets as underdogs against some pretty good competition. And those opponents were Iowa State. Also, it escapes me. BYU was another one. But anyway, three upset losses. Help me out if you know that third team, Brian.
Well, I'll let the people know, if you were a client of mine down the stretch last season, we cashed Kansas 5 straight weeks. They were a team we had written about it extensively. They were a victim. You mentioned losing some heartbreakers early in the season, Ross. They were on the wrong end of a lot of close game variance. That BYU game, if you remember, that was crazy because BYU, correct me if I'm wrong, someone in the chat, they were still undefeated, I believe, at the time, and Kansas beat them. So, yeah.
On the road beside.
Yes, in Provo. That was a wild finish, if memory serves me correct. Ralph, I know you like the total in this game. These are two offenses that like to play slow, as Kansas, they like to usually use all the play clock, a lot of pre-snap motion. Fresno, Ross mentioned the coaching change. They're going to move a little slower as well, and there's not a lot returning on either of these offenses in the respective receiver room. So I think I have an idea where you might be going with this total.
Yeah, or the defenses. Let me just say this. I do like the under, but, I am well aware that, Fresno State, new coach, new coordinators, they lost 8 of their top 10 tacklers, but Kansas lost 9 of their top 11. So both defenses are in the same boat. Fresno State's going to run a lot. You want to talk about a coach that likes to run. Here's something when you guys head to the bar tomorrow. Ask them, hey guys, there's 4 FBS games tomorrow. Which one pairs a pair of national championship head coaches? Well, we know Lance Leipold at Wisconsin Whitewater, I think, has 6 Division III playoffs. Well, Matt Entz at North Dakota State, he won 2 FCS national championships. So we have a coach that knows how to win. I think he was 60-11 in his seasons there. He left, spent 1 year at the USC linebacking coach, and brought a couple USC guys with him here. Matt Entz will run the ball. He will run the ball often, and they will be very slow paced. They do bring in an experienced quarterback. E.J. Warner, son of the Hall of Famer Kurt. Thank you. At Temple, he cost me a couple bets a couple years ago. He really matured last year at Rice. It was night and day what he did at Rice relative to Temple. It is tough playing for a third straight team in 3 years, but again, he has 21 games of starting experience, and I do like him. Kansas's O-line, 3 new starters. Again, but Fresno State is very inexperienced. But Kansas is a team to me that doesn't run up the score. You look at their last 4 games as a double-digit favorite. Not only are they 0-4 against the spread, they have failed to cover those games by a total of 40 points. So they're failing to cover those games as a double-digit by 10 points per game. And when you look at game number 1, season openers, when you have a favorite of 7 or more, those teams are only 45.2% the last 3 years. Again, not a wow number, but clearly something you have to think about. Because if you have an FBS team on deck and you're a big favorite in home one, that clearly changes the dynamic as well. And if you look at teams in the season opener that are a favorite by 7 or more with a total of 55 or lower, a lower total, laying over a touchdown, those teams are only 42.3% against the spread. Now, those lean towards Fresno State. I will say this. My Kansas power rating numbers have Kansas favored by 15.5, but I completely agree with Ross. Up until 3 or 4 years ago, I used to completely trust my power ratings week 1. Now with the transfer portal, I don't even look at them till basically week 4 until we start playing conference games. So I do them. I have them. I will continue to update them weekly. But again, I put very, very little stock into them the first month of the season.
All right, guys, keep those comments coming. You see one there right on your screen from Roger Long. I think we would all agree that it is a different era of college football now with NIL and the chance to throw. Ross, yes, you had something to say?
Yeah, I wanted to interject a couple more points. To Ralph's point about playing slow, Fresno State in a spring scrimmage this year, 25 straight running plays in a row. So that tells me Coach Entz wants to play a physical brand of football and control both interior lines. But on the offensive side of the ball, that speaks volumes to me. I'm not saying they're going to run 25 times in a row in this game, but it's certainly worth noting. Also keep in mind, folks, this will be Kansas' first game in their newly renovated stadium at home, yes. Memorial Stadium. So, you always got to look at the emotional standpoint too. So something to consider when handicapping a game.
Yeah, great point. I was going to bring that up too about the stadium, Ross. That may have played a role in them being a disappointment last year, Kansas. By the way, the third team they upset down the stretch last year, I cannot believe we forgot that it was Colorado. We should be ashamed that we would forget Deion Sanders with all the media coverage he got in Boulder last season. Ralph, you mentioned the great trend about Kansas as a double-digit favorite. Well, those of you who start feeling a little frisky, perhaps, on Saturday evening and want to bet Fresno State on the money line, I got one for you here that you may want to buyer beware about unloading on Fresno State money line. 0-30 straight up are the Bulldogs. The last 30 times they have been an underdog of 12 or more. So there you go. They typically don't win when they are an underdog of this size, but it seems like somebody likes them here.
One more point, Brian. One more point. Jalen Daniels, their quarterback, who was hurt from the majority of last season, returns. He is deemed to be fully healthy as he had off-season knee surgery. If he could stay healthy, Kansas is a much better team with him at quarterback.
Shout out to Jeffrey, by the way, in our comments section. I am not ignoring you, Jeffrey. By the way, I did see your comment right there about when you want an under, you send BP to the game. Yes, by the way, I'll get just because I feel so bad that you thought I was ignoring your comment. I'll be letting you know this Wednesday, I'll be at Progressive Field taking in the Guardians and the Orioles. So you guys all know what to do when I go to a day game. Bet the under. All right, but that's baseball. We're talking college football here today on the Blitz. Let's move to Hawaii and Stanford. I don't know if you guys remember this. 2 years ago, Hawaii took a ton of money. They were playing Stanford in the season opener, and things didn't go well for Hawaii. Now, that was in Palo Alto. This one is on the island. Ross, I did see you at a free play on the side of this game. Everyone's betting Hawaii again. Stanford, oh boy. It's not, they had what I believe we like to call a tumultuous offseason with the firing of the head coach in the spring. Andrew Luck has taken over the program. Frank Reich is now an interim head coach. Just basically, I think, doing his old buddy Andrew Luck a favor here. Hawaii's taking a lot of money. Do we follow the money here out on the island?
Early on in the process here, I don't get too caught up on the money going both ways. It does tell me something when a Power Four conference school like Stanford is playing a maybe a mediocre Mountain West Conference team like Hawaii, mediocre at best, and the money's going toward the Mountain West Conference team. So again, usually when you see public money going in a game like this, you look at the fact that the Power Four conference team's a small underdog, and they think they're getting a steal by taking them. But that's not been the case here. Having said all that, again, Hawaii 5-7 a season ago. 3 of their 7 losses came by 3 points or fewer. Experienced team coming back. And here's the thing with Hawaii. They didn't bring anybody in of significance on the transfer portal, and they didn't lose anybody of significance on the transfer portal. 14 returning starters. Again, a head coach that's been there. He's going into his 4th year now with the continuity of the coaching staff, and also continuity of the roster. And you hear me use the word continuity is very important to me in college football and early season matchups. And then you look at the other side of the coin. Stanford just has been decimated by the transfer portal. They lost 2 quarterbacks. They lost 20 players to the transfer portal. And this is a team, a program, I should say, 3-9 the last 4 seasons, identical 3-9 records, just 10-35 against FBS opponents. And what strikes me in terms of the state of the program is, you just mentioned it, Brian. It's awful unusual to see somebody with an interim tag as a head coach going in to game 1. And that's the case with Frank Reich. And it's how much confidence could I place in a program right now that's in that state with an interim head coach. Now, Frank Reich's a proven head coach, right? Had some success at Indianapolis, had some success as an offensive coordinator in the NFL, but it just speaks to me of the condition of the program at Stanford, and a little more stability going on right now at Hawaii. And I don't care what the money says right now. Sometimes the public wins, Brian, and I think this could be one of those cases. I like Hawaii on the money line here. You're not going to get me to lay 2.5. And if I'm not mistaken, Hawaii, as we speak, let me see what they are on the money line here, Brian, real quickly. I believe they were minus 130 the last I looked. But right now, okay. So I still will take them on the money line. I'll always look to use the money line, Brian, anything on a favorite that's minus 2.5 or less.
Okay. Well, we've got a question here from the aforementioned Jeffrey. You mentioned that you liked K-State as well in the earlier game, Ross. Yep. A K-State Hawaii money line parlay. Would that be a solid pick in your opinion?
Yeah, I would have to say so based on my opinions on both games, right? But here's the thing with me, Brian. You guys talked about this off air. You'll never get me to recommend a parlay. I don't care. It's tough enough to win 1 game, when you're asking to win 2 games, and yeah, rightfully so. To answer his question, it would make perfect logic based on my opinions on who I like on the sides to say that's a solid parlay. I don't know. You're going to get long odds, obviously, with Kansas State. But I'm not an advocate of parlays, but in this particular instance, to answer the gentleman's question, yes, it would make sense.
Ralph, any thoughts on that right there on moneyline? Is that something you also like to stay away from?
There's an occasion where I do. I use it when it's closer to almost like an NFL teaser type lines. When I'm looking at those, I'm not going to lay the money line on double digit. And I think when you bet a parlay, you're already, especially when you're betting favorites, you're already losing value, right? Because if you bet 2 games, you win them both, you're winning 4 units. You bet 2 games on a parlay, you're winning 2.4 units. So right there, they're taking away the value. Now, there are times when I do have a couple underdogs and, we money line parlay those, but that's sort of 1 to win, 8 to 1, more fun bets than they are your actual wagers. So I agree. I'm never going to say never, but I don't use many in college because your line, that line of 2.5 is based on what bookmakers think. It's much different than going into November when you have an NFL team that's a 4-point favorite, that you have an entire body of work. That is the legitimate number. So I am more scared betting money lines early because you're just basing a money line on what Vegas thinks week 1 without having seen them. So I certainly wouldn't do it week 1 because there's so much more randomness.
I stand corrected, Brian, that Kansas State is just minus 155, minus 160, but I still stand by my reasoning why I would stay away from there. Ralph, you're absolutely correct. I mean, you go 1-1, you lose the parlay. You go 1-1, you're losing just a little bit of juice. So on the straight side. So,
people say there's only value on a dog. There are plenty of times when you can lay minus 300 as a favorite. If you believe a team is minus 400, there's nothing square about laying 3-1, especially things like UFC and tennis where you're finding a lot more value. So don't fall in the trap that you can only find value on money lines betting the dogs. If you are doing your due diligence and you're into the season and they passed your eye test and you believe a number should be much higher, it's 100% okay to bet the money line on those favorites in that role.
Yeah, I see a
if
question.
They're going to give you the dog, take the points, right, Ralph? I mean,
yeah. On those money lines, right? They're going to pay you 4. They're giving you back 3. You bet it on the line. You're going to be laying 7.5 or taking 7.5. So again, the juice on the money line gets to be so inflated that you really lose the value on the dogs on the higher line games.
Yeah, I see that question in the comment right about Frank Reich. Ross mentioned his tenure at the Colts, guys. I thought at the end of his tenure with the Colts, it looked like the game had passed Frank Reich by, quite frankly. I don't mean to disparage, man. Again, he's doing a solid for his friend Andrew Luck here at Stanford. I think this is that's another issue with Stanford. Why I don't think they're going to be very good. It's a lame duck head coach, guys. Yeah. He was running, I thought, again, towards the end of that tenure in Indianapolis, what was an antiquated offense by modern football standards, and the game had passed by. Titan CT, I saw you in the comment section saying, I don't think the tree is drunk quite yet. That is probably true, being that it is only Thursday, but that is a long flight. Perhaps the Stanford tree, their esteemed mascot, could be channeling his inner Wade Ball in that flight across the Pacific Ocean there. And yes, there was an issue many years ago that I have joked about before here on WagerTalk's YouTube channel with the Stanford tree having a habit of being absolutely hammered during the game.
Brian, I want to add one thing to that. Don't be so quick to think Stanford has to make a long trip to Hawaii. That trip to Hawaii is less than flying to Miami of Florida now in the ACC. So they're used to those long flights. Plus, Hawaii, you don't have rest of getting a week flying home, having to prep, fly back out. They probably have been there, done that to relax. They're under no pressure. So don't let the travel affect you at all for this game 1.
Yeah. What's something Stanford should be worried about, though, not necessarily maybe the travel. Ralph, I think, makes an excellent point that with, the ACC, Stanford's on the Pacific coast. The fact they're in the ACC is a little laughable, but whatever. That's the world we're living. So they're used to the long trips now. But what they do need to worry about is this receiver room, guys. Do you know how many returning receptions they have from last year's team? One reception back. That's not good for this first game. Not a lot of experience out wide there for Stanford. If you're looking for an alternate, I'm going to throw this out to the chat here. If you don't want to play Hawaii money line anymore, Stanford team total under is worth a look as well. I think this Cardinal team is really going to struggle offensively early in the season. I know Hawaii is not a defensive stalwart. Obviously, they're known for offense, the run and shoot. But I think Stanford's going to struggle to score points in this one. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that. Or we can just move to another game where I think there's going to be a lot of points, quite frankly.
I just want to bring up one thing. And Ross mentioned that, being in Hawaii, they didn't lose transfers. They didn't gain transfers. So they sort of sat packed. When I look at their defense, they're returning starters from last year that started 13 games. Two starters started 13 games on the D-line. You have a nickelback and a linebacker that combined for 23 starts. And your DBs, they started 18 games. And Verdell Edwards was injured last year. He was an 11-game starter in 2023. If I have a player who was started every game and then he missed an entire year for injury, I actually count him as a returning starter. So when you have DBs, all 4 DBs started for the team last year, except Edwards started the year before, and they all are very experienced. to me, I think the Y defense is probably the going to be the surprise unit on this field.
Okay. Yeah, that's a 7:30 start, by the way, guys. This is not a late night degenerate special. This is not, you can't wait around till midnight here on the East Coast to play Hawaii. No, it's 7:30 Eastern on CBS. There is a game I referenced that I think there will be plenty of points. However, while I don't think Stanford's offense is very good, a game where I think there's going to be plenty of points, guys, is this Western Kentucky Sam Houston State situation. I believe this total at one point got as low as 59, but boy, has over money shown this week. Numbers back up to 61, 61 and a half, depending on your book. What have these two defenses lost relative to last year? Well, let me tell you. Western Kentucky lost their top 12 tacklers from last season. Not to be outdone, Sam Houston State lost their top 16 tacklers from last season. Every year, we always try to guess who's going to be the most improved defense in the country. Well, I'm going to just go on the record right now and say I think Sam Houston State going to be in contention for the least improved defense in the country. They are going to give up a ton of points, gang. Phil Longo is the new head coach there. He was a terrible fit as the offensive coordinator in Wisconsin. No one in Madison wanted to run an air raid, but Longo here at Sam Houston should get a chance to implement his offensive system. Western Kentucky also runs an air raid, guys. So it's air raid versus air raid. The Hilltoppers bring in the OC and quarterback from Abilene Christian, who put up big numbers at the FCS level. The quarterback, Maverick McIver, great quarterback name, by the way. So I don't know if you have anything on this game. To me, guys, it's over or pass as we go to Conference USA.
Yeah, I'm going to pass on this one, guys. Too much inexperience on both sides of the ball for both teams. Phil Longo, first-year head coach. There's no value to me, even with the over. I mean, yeah, it's all projection on being an air raid offense and not a lot of returning defensive players on both sides of the ball, but it still doesn't mean that the offenses are going to be very good. So we'll see.
Yeah. It's a good point, Ross. Obviously, it is all based on projections. And Ralph, I guess I'll throw it to you now. In taking the over, I guess the only question, we know these defenses are both going to be bad, but week 0, are the offenses going to be up to snuff, so to speak, to take advantage of those bad defenses?
Well, again, that's the reason, you go to week 1. Is this worth a play or not? And for me, it's not, just because they come back so inexperienced. They are bringing back a quarterback in Hunter Watson that started 12 games last year, is Sam Houston. But, they're 10 game. I think they won 10 games last year. It is one of the most fake 10-win teams we've had in college football. They went 6-0 on close games, which means they won every close game. They were plus 12 turnovers, which in a medium ranked team, it's almost impossible for them to have double-digit turnovers in back-to-back years. Unless you're one of the elite defenses, that normally doesn't happen. But Longo is going to go to the air raid. Before Wisconsin, I agree with you. Why Wisconsin would hire Longo, I have no idea. But prior to that, he was the OC at North Carolina for a couple years and Ole Miss for a couple years. And that's the type of pace and that you're going to see. He's still going to want to run the ball a lot, and they will. McIver, as you said, for Western Kentucky, we know they're going to press the pace. He has 30 starts over 3 years at Abilene Christian. So let's see. They brought in some other quarterback from an FCS team, 5 or 6 years ago, who ended up going to the New England Patriots as a pretty good draft pick. So we'll see if they continue to make that work. To me, it would be over or nothing for me. But I did come up with this interesting tidbit. When you look at a team on the road in game 1, they're playing an FBS team, and next week in week 2, they have a conference home game. So we know, unless you're an elite Big Ten or SEC team, these early games don't mean much. Your goal is to win your conference. If you're a MAC team, a Sun Belt team, a Team USA team, your entire goal is to win the conference. So those teams that on the road to start the season, playing an FBS team with a home conference game on deck, only 9-22 against the spread, and only 3-12, 20% against the spread since 2017. And to me, that makes total sense. Let's get the win. We're not going to worry about pushing the score up. We're going to get some young guys experience, and let's get ready to start our conference record at 1-0 7 days from now.
Yes, Steve Duke in the comment section makes an excellent point. This is Bearcat with a K at Sam Houston. I don't know. I guess they want to be different. But all right. I mentioned at the top that these are our 2 top college football handicappers from last year. I was in the top 5 as well, not to be outdone. Obviously, we've been breaking down these games for you here the last half hour. We want these guys to have a little bit of time to tell you what they've got cooking this weekend over at WagerTalk.com. Ross, throw to you first. College football kicking off, obviously, less than 48 hours. We've still got Major League Baseball, the NFL preseason, a lot going on. Talk to the people about what you've got going on for this weekend over at your page.
Yeah, I don't think I'll have a lot going on this weekend in college football. Look, folks, just because there's 4 games on the board doesn't mean you have to bet them. And I know that sounds counterproductive to what we do for a living, but the bottom line is I'm out to make money. And I was number 1 in college football last year in units earned, number 1 over the last 2 seasons in units earned combined in college football. And I probably aren't going to do anything when it comes to college football this weekend. But my Major League Baseball, by the way, folks, number 1 in Major League Baseball this season, 2025 season. So having a nice run of 84-52 since early May, up over 89 units in Major League Baseball. So you're going to see me go full bore in week 1. I don't think I'll be doing anything, if much at all, in week 0, Brian.
Okay. But hey, when the man gets involved, you want to pay attention. Again, WT.buzz/RB. Ralph, how about you this weekend? What do you got going on over at WagerTalk.com?
Well, I'm going to pass in college football. I've learned with the transfer portal, it's always better to leave a winner off than put a loser on. Remember, if you're forcing plays and you split, you're losing 10% juice. That's how you burn your profit throughout the year. So nothing for me, but I do have I like the preseason card. I do have a preseason NFL play for tonight, and we have a great special at Wager Talk. You buy September, get the rest of August for free, so you can get week 3 preseason, you can get week 1 college football. And remember, with Labor Day on the 1st, this is the first September in 7 years where we've had 4 NFL weeks. So buying September is a full 4 weeks of college football, a full 4 weeks of NFL football. You're getting my Nerfy plays and August for free. WT.buzz/RM. Oh, by the way, my college football and NFL plays rated 4% and 5%, 17-2, 90%.
Wow. All right. I am firing this weekend in college football. And believe it or not, unprecedented move. I will have a 5% play on Saturday. So check that out at WT.buzz/BP. Yes, I was in the top 5 leaderboard as well last season in college football. You go back to November of 2023, guys, up over 59 units in college football. So it's been back-to-back great seasons on the college gridiron. And we get off to great starts as well. Ralph referenced that tremendous special where you can be covered all the way through September. Don't forget, the sooner you buy, the more picks you get, because when you buy a 30-day all access, we're going to extend you all the way through the end of September. So that's basically getting August free of charge. And last September, guys, I hit a combined 66% in the NFL in college. So really excited to get things off on the right foot. This season, you also get not just we've heard these guys talk about Major League Baseball, NFL. I do soccer as well. I know not everybody loves soccer, but I love soccer because I'm number 1 in soccer here at Wager Talk since April 2024, up nearly 60 units of profit on the pitch. Almost as obscure as soccer for some would be UNLV, Idaho State. We want to leave no stone unturned here on the Blitz, guys. This is an FCS matchup. I would look to the over in this game for those of you who are interested in betting this game. Idaho State is the FCS team. The defense is bad. I think UNLV is going to be able to run all day on them. Now, UNLV has an interesting situation at quarterback. They bring in 2 transfers. First of all, I hate the Dan Mullen hire. I'm just going to come out and say that right now. Guys who get hired from the booth, I don't love it. We've seen the Trent Dilfer. I can't believe he's still stealing a paycheck at UAB. Not saying Dan Mullen's going to be as bad as him, but I think it's going to be I love UNLV under 8.5 wins. They're going to win this game against Idaho State, but the 2 transfers they have in at quarterback could not be more different. Alex Orji who could not throw the ball last year at Michigan at all. I mean, they just gave up. I mean, it was like the 1940s Army offense with him in there. And then you have Calandria, who transfers in from Virginia. All he does is throw deep passes. So the Idaho State defense, man, it's going to be, when UNLV is going to be switching these quarterbacks back and forth, the Idaho State defense is going to be on its heels. For those of you who think, well, all right, for this game to get over, it's got to be all UNLV. Maybe we look at UNLV's team total over. Idaho State could score, guys. This is an FCS offense that can score. So I would look at the over. That it would be over or pass if you are interested in that game. Again, we want to leave no stone unturned here on the Blitz. So with such a small slate, I thought I'd throw that in there. Yes, Ralph.
I do want to say this, live in Vegas, actually been gone for a couple months down in Florida, but even though you may not like the Dan Mullen hire, it has clearly helped their transfer portal this year because people want to come in and play for an SEC coach. Much different than Trent Dilfer playing for a small-time coach who was a quarterback. You're playing for an SEC coach, and their transfer portal is indicative of that. They had many people that should have never gone to UNLV to play for this year. If he can mesh that talent, we'll see. But again, he did get their recruiting numbers up very high. We'll see if he could turn it into a nice coaching job as well.
Yeah, a lot of P4 transfers that they did get. That's a very good point, Ralph.
The other thing I would mention with Dan Mullen, I agree with you, Brian, is I don't like when you hire a coach at the FCS level who's been fired twice at the FBS level. So it doesn't always translate to success just because he's coached in the SEC, actually, at two schools. So, and look, I think to Ralph's point, the NIL money, there's no excuse why a town like Las Vegas can't establish some really good NIL money for UNLV, especially off the success of which they saw last year. So it'll be interesting to see what transpires and how well that transfer class really is at UNLV.
Yeah, the other thing to watch with Mullen is he angling for a bigger job? That's something to look at because, I mean, here's a guy who coached the SEC. He's at UNLV. Is his agent already like, all right, let's have 1 or 2 good years here and then go back to a Power 4 conference?
Took the job because Odom showed that you can do that at UNLV. You can be having enough success. So I think it is to hit. It's not quite reaching the bottom of the barrel. He reached the middle of the barrel. Let's see if he bounces up or down. I will say this. I think the UNLV program as a whole is very disappointed they weren't invited to the Pac-12. I thought they all thought they were going to be invited, and then they went a different direction the last team with Texas State. I don't even know if that's final yet, but I know that was pretty much what was to be said and done. But I don't think that'll carry over here. But if they get off to a bad start early in the season, those are the type of things that can really wear on a team and have them fade down the stretch, if you're playing poorly.
All right. Dan Mullen makes the move from the booth back to the sidelines. However, I make the promise to you that I will be here every Thursday live. I am not going anywhere. We're here with the Blitz, WagerTalk's new college football show. We're going to be taking your questions, breaking down all the big games. We'll be back next week. A much larger slate, obviously, in week 1 than in week 0. Boy, do we have some big games, too, like Ohio State and Texas, LSU and Clemson to break down, Notre Dame and Miami on Sunday. I would like to thank both Ross Benjamin and Ralph Michaels for joining me here on this very first show.
Brian, one question.
Brian Power. And
next
Ralph,
week,
the floor is yours.
Sorry, next week we're breaking down every ranked versus ranked game, right? Plus answering some questions. So if you guys want the big games covered, the Blitz is the place to do it.
Absolutely. No stone unturned, like I said earlier. So for Ross, Ralph, I'm Brian Power. Until next time, let's cash some tickets.